So I've been wanting to do this segment for a while, and we're finally getting to it today. It's a conversation about anti-theism. Now, anti-theism has been used as a pejorative recently in some progressive circles, and it's viewed just like the term new atheist is viewed today. It's viewed through this negative lens, and it's supposed to denote bad atheists. They try to make a distinction. Certain people on this issue try to make a distinction where they say, well, there's atheists, and I love atheists. There's no problem with atheists. But those new atheists, and I mean the anti-theists, they're the really bad ones. And in their mind, what they're really saying is, hey, those atheists that are atheists, but they don't talk about it, and they don't argue for it, those are the good ones. If you actually have a voice and you speak up, well, then you're one of the bad ones. So it's almost like hey, know your role and shut your mouth if you're an atheist, okay? Don't criticize anybody else. They can criticize you all the fuck they want, but if you criticize them, well, now you're being a new atheist and you're being an anti-theist, and that's just bigoted and intolerant. So first, let's define this before we go any further. If you type anti-theism into Google, the first thing that pops up is this. Quote, anti-theism is active opposition to theism. The term has had a range of applications. In secular contexts, it typically refers to direct opposition to organized religion or to the belief in any deity, while in a theistic context, it sometimes refers to opposition to a specific god or gods. So that's the gist of it, and if you go to different places, you get slightly different definitions. But to put it simply, anti-theism is the belief that religions aren't true. And some might go a step further and say, hey, they're also harmful. But that's it. That's it. So atheism is the lack of a belief in God, the claim that, hey, I don't think there's enough evidence to prove a God. And anti-theism is the claim that religions aren't true. So how has this been used negatively today? Well, listen to a passage from Reza Aslan about this. Now, let me be clear before I continue here. Reza's a guy who's a mixed character. On many issues, I 100% disagree with him, and I kind of wish, I invited him on the show once, he didn't want to come. I kind of wish I could have this conversation and hash out these differences. But sometimes he makes some decent points. If you look in the Secular Talk YouTube archives, you'll see half the coverage of Reza is negative, half of it is positive. So he's a mixed character. But listen to his passage on anti-theism. He says, quote, what Harris, referring to Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and their ilk are preaching is a polemic that has been around since the 18th century, one properly termed anti-theism. While an atheist believes that there is no God and so follows no religion, an anti-theist opposes the very idea of religious belief, often viewing religion as an insidious force that must be rooted from society, forcibly if necessary. Now, that last line is the source of all the controversy about the term anti-theism and the way it's used today. And let me be clear, that last line is not true. It's not true. In fact, I'm an anti-theist, and I'm even a new atheist in many respects. And I've never read I've read all the so-called new atheist materials. Not a single one of them has ever argued to forcibly remove religion from society. Not a single one, not a single one, not a single one. Even the new atheist, which was the most hawkish, which I do disagree with on many things, Christopher Hitchens. Hitchens was for the Iraq War and a bunch of other stuff that I disagree with. But he never argued we should forcibly remove religion from society. That's a very broad claim and a very generalized claim and a very bold claim, and it's not true. If you read Sam Harris, if you read Richard Dawkins, if you read Daniel Dennett, if you read any of the new atheists, they never say forcibly remove religion. In fact, they're not even in favor of state atheism. So do you know what that means? Again, this gets very confusing for people who don't know the history of these different things. What that means is state atheism in like a communist Soviet Union sense is we are going to forcibly remove religion from society and because we don't like it and we don't think anybody should be religious. They're not in favor of that. If you listen to them, they say we're in favor of state secularism. So in other words, the state is neutral on the issues of religion, a separation of church and state. So you're allowed to be a Christian, you're allowed to be a Muslim, you're allowed to be a Hindu, you can be whatever the fuck you want to be. You can be fucking tooth fairy in your mind if you want. And you have the freedom to do that, but the state is separate from religion completely. Wall of separation between church and state. So Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Bill Maher, all these guys, they like state secularism, not forced atheism from the state. And that's the straw man that many people in the progressive community have unfortunately bought into about people who are new atheists and anti-theists. It's this idea of like, these atheists are somehow bigoted, somehow intolerant, and they forcibly want to remove religion from society. Wrong! What they want to do is convince people via logical argument that religion is very harmful. And guess what? That's true. And you know what else they argue? Religion isn't factual. That's also true. Now, you have a lot of religious apologists who do a tap dance and say, well, all the holy books are meant to be metaphorical, so there, haha, we wiggled away from your obviously true point that the books themselves aren't factual. But if you find that convincing, I think it's a little silly because you're putting that onto the book, that it's supposed to be metaphorical. There's a lot of overt claims in there about how to act and what to do, and there's things that can't even be interpreted in a metaphorical way. What's the metaphor behind stone gay people to death? What's the metaphor behind don't eat shellfish, don't eat pork? What's the metaphor behind women shouldn't be allowed to teach men anything? What's the metaphor behind bright yellow cows, like in the Quran? I mean, there's so much stuff in the Bible and the Quran that there is no metaphor for it. So the argument from new atheists is, hey man, religion is false and it's largely harmful. And to the question, is it harmful? Well, let me quote Bill Maher here on this one from one of his stand-ups. Religion is responsible for most wars, the Crusades, the Inquisition, 9/11, arranged marriages to minors, blowing up girls' schools, the suppression of women and homosexuals, fatwas, ethnic cleansing, honor rape, human sacrifice, burning witches, suicide bombings, condoning slavery, and the systematic fucking of children. So what we have here is anti-theism, what I call it easy. It's actually easier than atheism. The question of is there a God or not is a much harder question and a much deeper question than are the religions true. So anti-theism should be the last target in this conversation. It's easy. It's almost common sense in a way, right? And the claim that religion isn't true, but also that religion is dangerous, also seems fairly straightforward to me and very rational to me. So this straw man against anti-theists and new atheists is really misleading and not fair, because these people are peaceful people, and they're fair people, and they're smart people, and they're kind people, and anybody who says otherwise really doesn't know what they're talking about.